Hello, everyone. I welcome you tonight at our Rubryka Solutions from Ukraine podcast episode. On behalf of Rubryka, let me say again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for devoting your time to explain one of the most overlooked topics in Ukrainian solutions journalism, which is ecology and green recovery approach. So, again, to those following us on Rubryka, let me remind you that we have several platforms to follow us on: Twitter, Facebook, and also if you have $1 you don't know what to spend on, we have a Patreon where you can also support our team to find more solutions-based stories for you. Again, today we're going to talk about green recovery in Ukraine. What is it? How will it work out? And so, how do we start this introduction? Since we have a lot of data to base this information on. For example, as of January 2024, the amount of direct damage to Ukraine's infrastructure during the nearly 3-year fallout war reached almost $155 billion, as Kyiv School of Economics experts say. I can't really disagree about this information since throughout Ukraine there are thousands of destroyed homes. Infrastructure and businesses need immediate restoration. And despite the ongoing war and despite all the risks of failure, the reconstruction process is already underway. Yet, it is quite inefficient to do so based on old models, which is why we have a new concept, green reconstruction, and how will it be implemented in Ukraine, as it consists of several main components, which is implementation of energy efficiency principles in reconstruction, the use of sustainable materials, and the decarbonization of the energy grid. With these three complex topics, we are going to discuss tonight with my fellow experts today. So let me introduce our guests. Roman Nitsovych, Research Director at DiXi Group think tank. Roman, welcome. Can you tell us more about your company?
Thank you, Katerina. We are an independent think tank founded back in 2008, working in the field of energy extractives and climate, supporting government of Ukraine in developing some important policy documents, but also advocating for more transparency and accountability in this field.
Thank you, Roman. We also have Anna Ackermann, board member at EcoDia and analyst at the International Institute for Sustainable Development. Anna, greetings.
Hello, Katerina, and hello, dear listeners. I represent two organizations. The International Institute for Sustainable Development is an independent think tank founded in 1990, and we are working to shape and inform international policy on sustainable development and governance. And since 2022, we work on the issue of sustainable reconstruction of Ukraine, supporting civil society efforts around Europe, designing and thinking about how to actually rebuild Ukraine greener. And at EcoAction, which is a Ukrainian NGO founded in 2017, we are also looking, of course, at the green recovery. The organization is based in Kyiv, and we focus mostly on three topics: climate, energy, and agriculture, and broadly on how we can actually rebuild the country greener and better.
Thank you, Anna. And we also have another speaker, Pavlo Kravets, National Representative of Forest Stewardship Council in Ukraine. Pavlo, welcome.
Hi, Katerina. Thank you for invitation. And let introduce my organization. I'm FSC Ukraine National Representative, and FSC is Forest Stewardship Council. It is international, non-government, non-commercial organization who promote responsible forest management worldwide. And today I would like to highlight and to create link between sustainable forest management and green recovery. Let's go.
Thank you, Pavlo. So we're gonna divide this discussion in 3 blocks to make the information processing easier for everyone. So to begin with, let's understand the green reconstruction as a concept. What is green recovery and what does it mean for Ukraine as a whole? Since in 2023, the EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen announced the launch of the new European Bauhaus capacity building program for the reconstruction of Ukraine. This program has a variety of options and pros for Ukraine, such as practical assistance involved in the reconstruction. And the program will also promote the values of the new European Bauhaus. So let me start with Pavlo. Would you tell us the principles of the new European Bauhaus? What does it mean for Ukraine?
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to stress that new European Bauhaus are actually one of the tools for implementing Green Deal. And it aimed to achieve climate neutrality for European Union through green and circular economy. Why is this initiative important for Ukraine? It allows us to look for climate goals not from perspective of state tasks, but from interest of citizen. This initiative aims to form a new philosophy of people life in harmony with environmental and ensuring high quality of standards. NEP, it is initiate to create design and innovation ecosystem to addressing challenging facing society in Europe and for Ukraine, especially today, looking for war. And why it is important and necessary? Because it's need to bring green transition close to citizen. The new approach should be part on informed choice of people and finally change behavior as consumer. And your question about principles of new European Bauhaus. The principle of new Bauhaus, it is openness, it is engagement, inclusiveness, partnership, and sustainability. And it is a key successful implementation for green building goals and objectives. Different stakeholders like architecture, designer, developer, environmentalists can join to sharing NEP principles. Through interaction, collaboration, and co-creation of green approach with a respect, criteria, tools, and innovation will be more and more integrated to the solution in different levels, from local communities to recovery plan in national level. Finally, NEP principle, it can help our Ukrainian society in very hard situation in transition where we are to create energy and to go for harmony and synergy between different actors and to support for decarbonization through new philosophy of people who want to have a harmony life with environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavlo. So since we have these fundamental principles, a person like me who is a newcomer and a trailblazer in the world of green recovery, still, what exactly are we talking about when we mention green building reconstruction? like how do we reduce the climate footprint since the war environment is already cruel enough to Ukraine's ecology, and how do we make restoration more greener, let's say? Anna, what do you say?
Well, that's a very good question, and this is something we've been working on in Ukraine, and actually lots of experts all around the world are looking into this at the moment. And I think there is no easy answer, but I think we should also understand why we're talking about this. I would say before 22, before Russia's full-scale invasion, we were a lot like looking at our building stock, just like any other European country does. You know, as buildings consume 40% of all the energy in Europe, we have to reduce the energy consumption. So we were looking at our buildings from the perspective of improving energy efficiency first. So modernization of the buildings, how to actually improve energy savings and so on. This was moving quite slowly, but actually we were moving nevertheless and progressing since 2014 with certain reforms and so on. With the full-scale invasion, things change, of course, because lots of our buildings are now destroyed. And we are talking about rebuilding whole cities, and we are talking about restoring the whole economy. And I think this is why kind of there is a certain shift. So when, together with actually international experts, we've been looking at into climate impact of the war, and they've been calculating the greenhouse gas emissions that have an impact on the climate or that are connected with the war. And these numbers actually show that even though there is the fighting taking place, so there is emissions from the fighting itself, there is emissions connected to, for example, Nord Stream 2 explosion. There is lots of kind of related things, but there 1/3 of all of the greenhouse gas emissions connected to the war are emissions from reconstruction, and these are caused by extra production, so production of concrete and metals and all of the different things which are needed to actually build the new infrastructure, including, of course, the housing. We have 250,000 buildings destroyed all around the country. So the question is, how do we actually rebuild better, meaning how we decarbonize? And the rule of thumb is that if you don't actually need to build a new building, just don't do it. You have to, and we have to start thinking from scratch. Do we actually need to be rebuilding those cities that were completely destroyed, for example, such as coal mining towns? And do we actually need to build this school or not? Maybe we can merge some things and so on. These are very complicated discussions, but we should be having them because we usually think, let's rebuild what we used to have before, but actually we have to be thinking about building not just better, but having changing this principle. So this is kind of the underlying, I think, aspects. Then when we talk about green recovery now for Ukraine, again, it's all complex, meaning large. So we have to be thinking about all the debris from the war. How do we actually use them? And how do we apply circular economy principles, which even in the EU are still under development? They don't have all of the needed policies in place to implement them. And we should be thinking about this now because we have tons of debris to recycle. We have to be thinking about this. We have to be thinking about energy efficiency. And very important for Ukraine is resilience. And this is actually the UN definition of building back better after the destruction, after disasters, is making this new infrastructure resilient to any future threats. What does it mean for us for the case of Ukraine? It's really, and I think we understand this now, considering we have, these big attacks against the energy sector, our buildings have to be more autonomous. So we should be thinking about building housing with at least some minimal local production of energy. It could be coming from different renewable sources and other ones. Of course, renewables are the best for decarbonization too. And I think we'll discuss today also about how it actually looks like. So we already have some first projects shaping up in Ukraine, which I think we can call green reconstruction during the wartime, which are at the moment for now less about circular economy kind of application. Although there is some already, but a lot about having more autonomous buildings with renewables, storage, and energy efficient buildings too. So combining different elements and also actually some environmental principles which are included too, such as no use of asbestos, no use of old style type of fluorescent lamps, but LEDs instead, and so on, where we can actually apply energy saving too. So this is about kind of the green recovery in practice that is already happening now, while the EU is moving toward even more ambitious targets. But this is also like a whole another discussion about the EU's policies and so on, and how we actually can apply them.
Thank you, Anna. Since we mentioned the energy efficiency, and since I understand that both of these terms, including with the green recovery, are irreplaceable, they must go along together. So I would like to ask the next speaker, Roman, about the energy, about what is the green building in terms of energy. How can it work out in the short-term perspective, since people need a recovery now and the recovery is ongoing now? But how can it work out, at least in the next, let's just fantasize, in the next 5 years? And how will it work out on the state level and on the regional level?
All right. So if we were not in a state of war, we would be talking about more simple things like green transition, which would be more, I would say, gradual transition from fossil fuel-based economy to more renewable-based economy. Energy sector in particular, about more gradual shift to decentralized energy system, more gradual decarbonization, slower implementation of or rollout of energy efficiency measures. However, on the one hand, the war brought us many consequences of increased impact on environment, like million hectares of forests affected, additional emissions of million tons of greenhouse gases. So if we were to rebuild the economy, we would need to do it in a way that would minimize any harmful impact on environment. Second is definitely the matter of energy security, which we are feeling even now, as even with a slight decrease in daily temperatures, we need to cut some industrial electricity consumption, and all households are also urged to reduce consumption in evening peak hours, because we do not have enough capacities in our power system. So if we were to rebuild the power system, we need not to focus on those bigger units using coal, but looking into more smaller and scattered across the country units using local resources, namely renewables like biomass, like solar, wind, battery storage technologies. So all the new technologies which make us not only less impactful on our planet, on climate, but also more resilient in terms of energy supply. So about the buildings, yes, the war. To recent estimates, minimal estimates are 250,000 of buildings, including 27,000 apartment buildings, which creates enormous pressure on the market of real estate, but also creates opportunities to leapfrog. So actually, the war also creates opportunities to do things faster, to decarbonize faster. And if you talk about buildings, this means that at least all the public buildings should be near zero energy buildings, to demonstrate how they can perform better and use the least energy possible. All new residential buildings should comply with minimal requirements on energy efficiency. Ideally, of course, the higher the energy performance, the better in terms of those grades of energy certificate. However, we need to understand that people aim to or believe that the recovery should be fast and cheap for them. So having these buildings in place with best energy performance means high upfront investment. So I think it is important also to inform people about the operational cost of building maintenance, and to look at the building not only as high upfront investment, but also the cost of building throughout its life cycle. So because when after World War II there was a mass construction in Ukraine of those cheaper buildings, no one cared about energy consumption. No one cared about what would be the cost, what would be the living conditions, how comfortable would people feel. Everyone was oriented at cheap and fast construction, and even before the war, we struggled with with those obsolete building stock, and they need to somehow reconstruct whole blocks of such buildings in bigger cities. So it is better to do the right thing now than to invest additional money in the future in modernizing and bringing those buildings to minimal level of energy efficiency.
So then again, when we're talking about energy efficiency and the fact that currently Russia's strategy against Ukraine's energy grid is way more violent than, again, atrocities during the World War II, since about 80% of the energy grid in Ukraine is completely destroyed. So I think we should dive in at how this particular industry should be rebuilt. For example, the Ministry of Energy states that the national energy strategy is supposed to be as close to climate neutrality as possible by 2050. This does take some time, but as the ministry claims, this means the availability of clean energy, overcoming energy poverty, full functioning of national energy markets, and even their integration into international ones. So then again, I would like to ask Roman again about how this type of recovery, if we follow the principles of green reconstruction, can make sure that our energy security is more reliable and better and even safe. Maybe there are some already, for example, concepts of how we can do this better.
Talking about recovery after such enormous damage, you inevitably face certain trade-offs between energy security and decarbonization as guiding principles, at least in short term. Let me explain what I mean. Even in summer, we would be having a deficit in our power system, which would force to cut consumption, at least in industry, which would mean less industrial output, less economic output, less defense capabilities, etc. Because stronger economy means also stronger defense capabilities. and less dependence on foreign assistance. If we talk about upcoming heating season, this deficit will be the same as in summer. So the task is to find somewhere at least 2 gigawatts of additional power resources. And even if we bring all the solar panels possible here, they would not be producing that much output in the winter without storage technologies and without reconfiguration of our grids, which would take years. So for this winter, we would need fossil fuels, namely gas turbines, gas pistons, cogeneration units, which run on fossil gas to survive and to be able to sustain our economy. So short-term or just immediate needs are not so climate friendly. However, I would say if you replace one big coal unit with 10 smaller gas units, of course it will produce less greenhouse gases. Burning gas is more efficient than burning coal. Second, in future, those units can be converted from fossil gas, natural gas, to biogas, like biomethane or synthesized gas. So, of course, this infrastructure would not be treated as a stranded asset. And besides, gas-fired generation is ideal balancing, tool for rollout of large-scale rollout of renewables. So definitely it's a trade-off, but it also would help us in the future to do more massive investments in renewables and battery storage technologies and other things which would contribute to more resilient and more green energy system. So I would say that there is always a matter of priority. What is a matter of priority right now? And it seems that the matter is energy security, but not at any cost, definitely. But we need to use all available technology. What is puzzling, though, is that currently we see also attempts to do big construction, like big nuclear units construction, which is somehow questionable right now. Although I may understand the reasoning behind. The first reasoning is that we would need to phase out our existing nuclear units in 10 or 15 years. So we need to think about what comes next, what comes instead. And second, it's also low carbon energy. But I would say that a part of this, we would also need to focus on economy. So the levelized cost of electricity for new nuclear units is way higher than of renewables. And such projects are implemented not in a year or two, but in 10 years minimum. So it's really about, creating some long-term dependencies and long-term, paths. So it's really a matter of setting proper priorities.
Now that we have already witnessed energy grid downfall, and as the offensive of Russian forces is unraveling further into Ukraine's territory, we realized that the data published by in early 2024 saying that 10% of the housing stock in Ukraine was damaged or destroyed, and this number will go higher, unfortunately. And will lead to displacement of more Ukrainians from their communities. So this makes us think more about the need to rebuild residential buildings and make it as much aware-ish as possible. So if we again dig deeper in the EU standards and safety of the future communities that are going to house the renewed buildings, how will this work out? How real in terms of war climate and the future crisis upcoming? Well, how will this work out? I would like to ask Anna this: how will it work actually? What is the scheme?
I think it's it's a kind of big question, of course, for us to which extent we can catch up in general with EU standards. At the same time, we did quite a lot of progress since 2014 in terms of at least having lots of important reforms to actually implement the EU legislation on energy efficiency on paper in Ukrainian law, and lots of secondary legislation that was adopted before full-scale invasion. And also such things as the functioning of the Energy Efficiency Fund became possible. So thanks to EU support, actually together with DiXi Group, we have been advocating or had been advocating back since 2015 about creation of a fund that would be available for population to upgrade the residential building stock. And it started working. And unfortunately, just when it started gaining the pace again, Russia came with this larger war. Nevertheless, I think I really keep always saying how incredible Ukrainians are, that while they're fighting, they are also thinking about reforms and what to do next, and how to implement EU legislation further. And these talks continue. Actually, just in the end of last year, so in December 23, the government approved a long-term thermal modernization strategy by 2050 of Ukraine. And that strategy is aligned with the EU strategy to decarbonize the building stock. And so this is what it basically says. We have to decarbonize our building stock by 2050, and we have to make it carbon neutral. So this is, I think, the most important thing to understand, that we set this goal, and it's official, that we are moving together with other EU countries in that direction. Then when we look at the current EU standards on how they build new buildings, at the moment, the EU has the so-called nearly zero energy building standard. We call them shortly between ourselves NZEB. And this standard is in place since, already actually for almost 5 years or more, that all of the new buildings have to have at least some share of renewables most of the time. But, I mean, it's quite tricky because actually every country adapts it, but with very high energy efficiency classes and plus some renewables to make sure that there is some local generation. But then just recently, actually just a few weeks ago, the EU already officially released its very, very new standard that will be in place since 2028 for public buildings and 2030 for all of the new buildings, which is called zero emission buildings, ZEBs, we call them between ourselves. So this standard would basically mean that buildings would have to be very close to carbon neutral. And in order to achieve that, we have to be talking about circular economy approach. So it would be not enough to just have a very energy efficient building and to just have renewables, but to make sure that all the materials which are used in this building, they have to be environmental, they have to be carbon, with a low carbon footprint, as low as possible, and so on. So the definition is already in place, and all of the EU countries are preparing to start working with the standard and on country level to define it in their legislation and then going ahead. What happens in Ukraine at this moment is that we haven't actually yet defined the current EU standard, NZEB, so near zero energy building standard. But we are planning to start building with the standard already starting 2027. And that means that the time is quite short, and we have to, in a way, to actually prepare for this, new standard taking place and actually having our buildings even better than today, because today our buildings correspond to energy efficiency class C, sometimes even lower, to be honest, which is fine. It's not a bad energy efficiency class. I think most of the people who work in Ukraine said for Ukraine is excellent. And if we already today rebuild the damaged or destroyed buildings up to the energy efficiency class C standards, it's already wonderful for our realities. To have enough insulation, to make sure that the quality of all of the materials, equipment used is good, the works are done well, and energy efficiency class C can be proved is great. But of course, everything that is on top of that, class B, class A, plus renewables, it's more expensive. And that's why it's kind of tricky, I think, for us now, because to be honest, we have no money. Let's be fair. How do we actually do that? That's why we need some time to actually understand what kind of programs have to be in place in order to support this, because just what Roman was talking about, what we mentioned before, we actually need now renewables in our buildings because it's about our security and resilience and so on. So we have to, the standard will be in place in a few years, but we have to be already implementing as many projects as possible to approach this better standard and to make and to find these resources, and actually to find not only resources but people who could do it and so on. So this is where we stand at the moment. But I think the whole message is that we are actually moving ahead. I think in one way or the other, it's tricky. There is lots of challenges, but Ukraine is moving ahead.
If I may add here that several important factors we need to take into account. The first factor is social acceptance. So they need people to accept the fact that if a school, a kindergarten, and administrative facilities built, it would cost twice as much, a lot of much, as compared to ordinary construction to do it zero emission. And people need to accept it because it's mostly public money. So it's their taxes that would need to be spent on this. Second thing is the potential change in ownership models or structures. Because as I imagine, not every person whose house is destroyed or damaged would receive a certificate or money, for constructing his or her new building. So potentially, many of special apartments building will be constructed by a state or by a construction company, and then be leased to those who need. So we really need to develop this mortgage market and new financial instruments to make this living for people more affordable. Although Ukrainians are used to own their housing, now it's also about social acceptance, about not owning but residing and paying the rent. As in many Western countries, it's also a matter of social acceptance. So here we might strike into some unexpected, behavioral things that we need to deal with.
That doesn't really sound like fluffy clouds and the most amazing perspective, yet we have a bunch of work to do before. But regardless, maybe we do already have some examples of green recovery projects in Ukraine already. Maybe they were implemented not specifically during the full-scale war, maybe during the 2014 war. And do you have some examples in projects, because I can't really make my mind to it?
And that's the again, one of the fascinating things about Ukrainians. We do so many things all at the same time. But before actually I will give you a few examples, I thought I should also say about the cost, because it's very important. And Roman just mentioned social acceptance, and that yes, and building up to a higher standard is costly. But as with all of the better things, better quality stuff, it pays back, right? So a better decarbonized building built according to the newest standard It's about energy efficiency, it's about energy savings. That it means people would be paying sometimes up to minus 70% less for heating. Heating is usually the main number in our bill, right? So an energy efficient building actually means, or like again, more resilient, autonomous, and so on. It's about paying bills which will be much smaller, but you have to have this first investment, which is large. So where do you actually, how do you do that? I think this is important to remember. This is why energy efficiency is so important. And this is why some of the measures, energy efficiency measures in Ukraine, they are kind of economically feasible today, for sure. But again, when it's kind of a larger perspective and building a whole new building or, repairing a badly damaged building, this, you have to take this into consideration and to confirm Roman's words about how much it would cost to build a better, greener building. Just actually months ago, we released a study together with Berlin Economics who did the calculations for the city of Bucha that was, of course, badly damaged. There is more than 2,000 buildings that were damaged or destroyed in Bucha. So they took those 2,000 plus buildings and calculated how much it would cost to repair them to the way they were before, to the current standard that exists in Ukraine, to the kind of minimal standard, or to the kind of much better EU standard with renewables and with everything. So the costs are the following. So for these 2,000 plus buildings, these are different residential and public and private homes. So it's kind of mixed, but numbers are the following: is that to build buildings up to the way they were before, and most of them were quite old, some of them newer, but nevertheless, it's 100 million euro for just one Bucha. To build them according to the current Ukrainian standard, it's 2 times more. That's what Roman said. It's more than 200 million euro. And to build them up to the best current EU standard, NZEB, it's 300 million. So it's 3 times more. And these numbers are really big for the city like Bucha. But if before, and Roman mentioned that before our municipalities or anybody, before 22, mostly, they would never understand why we would need renewables on the roof of a kindergarten or a hospital or anywhere. Why would we do that? This is just cost too much. What's the point? Now everybody wants to have that. There is not even question, why do we need that? I think everybody understands. And that actually helped us to help lots of civil society organizations to cooperate with municipalities since starting in 22, and to have first pilot projects on greenery construction, and plus then some donors also that support Ukraine, some international organizations that also came in with their own green recovery projects. And the way it looks like, so one of the first projects that we did together with so it was EcoAction, Greenpeace, Eco Club. We helped to install on a small hospital in Horenka, in Hostomel community in Kyiv region that was damaged, and then it was repaired with energy efficiency measures. We helped to install renewables plus storage. So there was solar PV installation on the rooftop, storage, and also heat pump. And all of that was worth about 50,000 euro. It's not a crazy sum. I think it's quite feasible the way, and we try to show these numbers always to the also international organizations that it's doable. Although the building is quite small, it's not a very big hospital, but it's working. And then the systems prove to be working also in wintertime when it's cloudy. So there is still some production from renewables, and there is kind of a minimal support to this hospital. And they are very happy about it. So we are bringing international guests there to show this is a small green reconstruction project for Ukraine. And then when we look a bit at a wider perspective on green reconstruction, there is Scandinavic donor, so it's called NEFCO, who have green reconstruction projects in Ukraine. And then they help to repair public buildings, also very often schools and so on. So their approach is very interesting. So they say they try to make it as realistic as possible for Ukrainian realities. They say we help you to repair and to have the energy efficiency class C plus 10% better. So better than the current standard, plus at least some kind of green elements, something like renewables or something like a heat pump or something else. And then there is also no, for new buildings, they are thinking about having no fossil fuels in these buildings. So no gas, no connection to gas anymore, no nothing, but really like autonomous production locally. It could also be biofuels, by the way. It could be not only like solar panels or anything connected to that. And also no, I mentioned it before, so no asbestos because it's very dangerous. And also no fluorescent old style lamps and lighting, but LEDs and so on. But this is the basic. So this could be called already green recovery in our realities. That is doable, and these projects are taking place. And I think one of the most exciting things is that there is now more and more projects of our municipalities cooperate with civil society organizations to actually have, this renewable projects on critical infrastructure on hospitals, water supply facilities, schools also, to make sure that they have, at least like a minimal production for the case of blackouts. And there is, I think, more already. I don't have a number to give you, but there is kind of tons of projects which are happening, have been happening in the last year, perhaps all around the country, because everybody's interested. There is lots of demand. And for the moment, there is not enough, I think, even capacity from civil society to support, or even from international community, there is not enough also programs that could also, that actually offer this. So this is where we stand at the kind of the green reconstruction, and this is how it looks like at the moment.
Thank you. I like the fact that despite our badly affected environment and despite the cost of green recovery, Ukrainians still stand still for specifically this idea and concept. They be like, okay, just shut up and take my money. Let's just like fill up our newest projects and start working on more ecologically aware and healthy approach for future residents of the recovered projects. And they're starting to think that the best basically material for green reconstruction is basically wood, since it's also considered as a trend in global construction. And then again, I think I would like to refer to Pavlo. I would like to ask you about how can we use wood for green recovery reconstruction? How much would it cost for Ukraine to fulfill its plans of green recovery projects by using the wood? And also, I would also like to specify, since FSC is specialized in using certified wood for green recovery projects, which type of wood should Ukraine use, and how should we pass all our green recovery projects up to EU standards?
Thank you for your question. And first of all, I would like to stress that considering these EU requirements and other requirements for reduce carbon emission, the wood is, for me, is the best solution, because the wood it is a renewable resources, and it is a natural storage of carbon. And it's look like very funny that if we use more and more wood, we have more and more impact to reduce carbon in atmosphere, and it is positive impact for climate goal for Ukraine, for European Union, and for whole world. But we need to take into account that we need to be sure about source of wood, because if we use the wood or harvesting of wood cased afforestation or degradation of forest, of course, it is not accepted, and of course, it is strongly prohibited if wood comes from illegal harvesting, and it is all time challenged. That need to have a balance between that. For one hand, we need to use wood more. For other hands, we need to be sure that we do not harvest more than some limit. Limit are important for environmental, for social needs, and for construction. And it is all-time debate. Where is this limit? Where how much wood we can to explore to reconstruction? And right now, this discussion are starting to be more and more hot, and the debate starting to be more hot, because it is all time a discussion about balance. Where is the balance? Where is this thresholds that more high we can to break this balance between different of interest, and our forest started to be degraded, and it will be create more problems for us and for our life and for environmental. And why it is important discussion? Because in according with study, about 11% of all greenhouse emission caused by afforestation and degradation of forest in worldwide. Therefore, it is like additional task, and some additional attention are needed to bring in our society when we talk about different solutions for decarbonization, and to use wood as renewable materials for green reconstruction. And of course, it's a need to use different tools to be sure that we use wood from origin, from responsible source. And one of solution, it is third-party verification in according with internationally recognized requirements, considering ecological, social, and economical requirements. If this balance of different requirements by forest management met, the independent auditor will issue a certificate, and in accordance with this certificate, they approve that forest management are responsible, and all businesses can be sure that they use wood from responsible source. That is how FSC is work, and how FSC to provide a solution in this area. And right now, FSC is the most recognized forest certification scheme worldwide. And for me, right now, it is a right time to start a discussion about how we can able to use our forest resources in more appropriate way, considering that if we use the wood from responsible source, it can help to get decarbonization and other tasks related climate to achieve climate aims. And the other important topic that need to take into consideration it is localization. Because localization it is play important role if we talk about large-scale recovery. Large-scale recovery will need it a lot of logistic, as well as this logistic will case additional greenhouse emission, considering the complex of supply chain. But thanks that Ukraine have some good forest resources and considering this experts study that Ukraine have a very high level of localization, especially for wood construction. Because we have good forest resources, as well very well developed wood processing industry. Finally, it will help for create additional values in country. That is additional some add value for our country in general, as well as if we're talking about wood, we need to take into consideration that wood, it is not only renewable resources, it is recycled resources, and it is materials with a long life cycle, which takes tens years or till 100 years. Therefore, for long-term strategy of green recovery, we need to use wood as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. But yet again, how can we ensure transparency in the wood supply chain and by this attract more investments to Ukraine for future green recovery projects?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, there are different another solution to be sure that green buildings are origin from responsible source, and and one of solution it is internationally recognized system of score evaluation system. Score international evaluation sustainable building. There is internationally recognized system as LEED, BREEAM, Active House, and other, which provide requirements on the different aspects in planning, building, and using of houses. And it is include parameters related environment, resources, and energy, as well as quality of life. Therefore, developers, local communities, architectures, and private person can choose the building which meet these requirements. Therefore, it is guarantee of responsible solution which consists quantitatively evaluation the green reduction. And wood from responsible, in particular FSC certified timber, is one of part of this core evaluation system for building. Stakeholders in Ukraine initiated own national score system based of international one, and I assume that it helped for promotion green building solution. For your second part of question about how it's related business, how it's make some influence for cost and how business can use this opportunity. First of all, I would like to stress that every business want to be sure in their long-term viability. From supply chain perspective, it means that wood shall origin from reliable and sustainable source. In this case, it's needed to have a transparent supply chain, same time to demonstrate own responsibility for clients, government, and society. It can significantly support with finance resources because banks and some international donors will provide cheaper money with a longer repayment period. It is not for short time solution where emergency intervention required right now, but it is for long-term solution which need to consideration right now. Of course, the cost of this building will be higher for initial stages, for first investment. But if we're talking for whole life cycle of house and quality of life and save energy and resources, finally it will be lower cost and more high quality. Despite the hard solution, despite that we are on a time of war, I think we need to talk and we need to thinking about a green solution, green criteria right now. And if we starting to talk, if we starting to discuss, it will help us to make a right solution for long-term perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a great message to think about not in the future, but actually right now and take some actions also in the meantime. I also want to thank other two speakers for your introductory course for me and a deep dive into the issues that are to be resolved in the nearest future, hopefully. This was a really interesting conversation, and I suppose our audience found out a lot about the green recovery and how would it work out in Ukraine and what we have to reach in the nearest future. So if the audience is still listening to this very end, I would like to remind you that we have a Twitter and Facebook where you can follow Rubryka, as well as the newest Instagram page where we reached almost 600 followers. So please subscribe to our Instagram as well and see our newest materials there on Rubryka website. Also, if the audience is still present here, I would like to remind that we have a survey ongoing on Rubryka's website, and we always remind about this on our social media platforms. Maybe it's not once in a lifetime opportunity, but definitely once in a year that you can take part in our 5-minute survey and take part in our special raffle and win Rubryka's firm sweatshirt. So with this said, thank you again for joining this conversation, and we hope to hear each other in the newest projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Katerina, for your time and consideration, and thank you for brilliant speakers. It is a privilege to be with you, and I'm really inspired your speech, your ideas, and looking forward for further cooperation and as well in Ukrainian podcast where I will feel more comfortable. Thank you.